Hello and welcome to the next episode in the series that I'm putting together, and this was a series about putting together a toolkit based on an existing deck. The deck in question is No Hand No Land, which I sort of showcase in the first episode. So if you've sort of jumped in on this episode, I suggest you go back and have a look and find out what the starting deck looks like. And over subsequent episodes, I'm going to be building a toolkit which allows me to build variants around the concept of land disruption, hand destruction. And so what I'm doing is looking for cards that I can add to this. So I'm going to start off now by looking at the land and mana acceleration base for this deck. And then on other weeks I'm going to be looking at other aspects of the toolkit that I can put in there. And what you'll hopefully end up with, or what I'm hopefully going to end up with, is a toolkit that allows me to play different and adjust for different metas, to play different variants, just basically have fun. And then I'm hoping to apply this to other archetypes, other types of deck, which I can then create a template for, to create a toolkit. So first up, let's start off with the basic land in this. What I've decided to do with this deck is try and use land that very much reflects the destructive nature of the deck. So I've chosen my mountains from the Shards of Alara set, and we've got some nice, here's some very barren looking mountains with some lightning in the background. We've got some more lightning ensorcelled mountains there, and then nice bit of lava is always good to signify destruction. Moving on to our swamps, we've got some stuff here from the original Mirrodin set, and you can see some rather toxic looking lands from an area in Mirrodin called the Dross. If any of you have read the novel that was done for this set. So look, very nasty looking lands. Then we move on to our non-basic element here. This is our sort of mana fixing, our dual lands. I'm going to talk a bit about dual lands later on in this video actually, and go through the different types. If you remember, in the original deck we have Sulphurous Springs. It taps straight for 1 colourless mana to your mana pool. The conditional tapping on here is for black and red, and the condition is that it deals you 1 damage to generate black or red mana. Hopefully you won't be doing that many times, because ultimately you'll be able to get some normal swamp mountains out. So this is just some early fixing, and there's 4 of those in the deck already. So I was looking to other things to include in my toolkit, other dual lands. One thing I want to stick in here is the Dragon Skull Summit. This is a conditional tap land. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a swamp or a mountain, and then you can tap it for black or red mana straight away if you've got that swamp or mountain in play. If not, you've got to basically tap it, and then you have to wait till you untap it your next step. So that's a card. I've got 4 of those that I'm going to put into the toolkit. Now, if you're looking for sort of a very budget version of that, you've got Alchem Refuge. I mean, Dragon Skull Summit's not that an expensive card, but if you're on a real tight budget, you might want to take a look at Alchem Refuge. It's a land from Zendikar. By the way, the Dragon Skull Summit's from M12, as you can see, but it was also in M10 and M11. The Alchem Refuge is this is another tap land. There's more of a benefit on this than a condition, in that when it comes into play you do gain 1 life, but that doesn't affect the fact that it's tapped, and eventually when it untaps on your following turn, you can use it to obviously add black or red to your mana pool. So I've got 4 of those that I'm just going to put into the deck to just experiment with slightly slower tempo, even tighter budgeted deck. And we're moving on to some mana acceleration. Obviously in black we've got the classic Dark Ritual. I've got 4 of these from Tempest that I want to use. These look very much like Anton LaVey here as the evil wizard. These for a cost of 1 black add 3 black mana to your mana pool. But there are obviously different artworks available. Other ones that I've sort of acquired through just opening various boosters. Here's one from Ice Age. Then there's a Dark Ritual here, which is actually from a dual deck. This would be from the Phyrexia deck in Phyrexia versus the Coalition. And then here's a Dark Ritual from 5th edition. And obviously there's other sets as well where there's different artwork in as well. Dark Ritual got reprinted quite a few times in the earlier sets. And moving on to red mana acceleration, we have Seething Song. So you can add 5 red mana to your mana pool for a cost of 2 and a red. There's 2 flavours, I believe, of this artwork. This one's from Dragons versus Knights, the Dragons deck. It's in this format in another set, I can't remember which one off the top of my head. And then we have this one, which is from this artwork here, which is from Mirrodin, but also I believe 8th edition, the version, if I got it right, has the same artwork in it. So that's Seething Song there, and that's our red accelerant. Now over subsequent weeks I'm also going to look at creatures that can tap for red and black mana when we come to look at sort of the creature base in this deck. While we're on the subject of lands, what I'm going to do is just go through some dual lands. These are not the real lands. Because of the expense here, I've basically just printed up some proxies just for the purpose of this video. So we've got some rather poor proxies here, I'm afraid, but anyway, does illustrate a point here. So we've got a number of tap lands, that have been used or been printed in Magic over the years, but I thought it's probably the best thing to do is just look at the original dual land here. I don't know how good this comes out. This is the Badlands. They had this annoying spirally art colour scheme here which made it really difficult to read, and you can tap it and add either red or black to your mana pool. Interestingly, this counts both as a mountain and a swamp. So that's really useful in when you're trying to do other things with your lands. So that's quite important. If you're using, say, fetch lands to fetch other lands, because this class is as a mountain and a swamp, you can actually use a fetch land where it says, go and find a swamp or go and find a mountain, which you can't always use with other non-basic lands where they don't specifically say that. So that's our original dual land. So what else have we got in here? Well, one interesting thing is we have a different artwork here for the Sulphurous Springs, which I've already got in the deck. There is a lot of different artwork for this one. So that's our Sulphurous Springs. And we've obviously got the Dragon Skull Summit that I've mentioned earlier, which is that's an example of actually tap land. So that Sulphurous Springs, if you remember, was a pain land. This is one that can come into play tapped under certain conditions. And you've also got, in contrast, the one of the ones from Scars of Mirrodin, Blackleaf Cliffs. This comes into the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or fewer other lands. So that can be any other land, not just black or red. But if you do control 2 or fewer, then it can be used to be tapped for black or red. So it's much more an aggressive version for an aggressive tempo deck. Then we've got a Arkham Refuge, which I mentioned earlier, so that gives you life. So it's not really conditional, it just, you know, sort of bonus life, but it does come into play tapped. Then we have, I'm just going to show you a couple of straight tap lands with no real conditions applied. Both of these come into play tapped. Here's the one from Cold Snap, which was a snow land. Comes into play tapped, taps for black or red. And this one, Urborg Volcano, comes into play taps for black or red. So essentially they're the same thing, they just have different names. And one is a land and one is a snow land, which obviously will have impact when you're playing it within the particular set that snowland was designed for. Now there are other lands that work in slightly different ways. Also, there's an example of an artifact, which is a sort of artifact version of a pain land you have there. There's another version of a land, Lava Claw Reaches, which comes into play tapped, but you can use that to basically create on the fly a 2/2 black and red elemental creature. So that's an example of a man land we have there. Then you have a shock land, Blood Crypt. So this can be used to add black or red to your mana pool, and that costs you 2 life. For that's Blood Crypt. Then we have an example of a bounce land, Rakdos Canarium, enters the battlefield tapped again. So it's both a tap land and a bounce land, in that it bounces another land you control back to your hand, and you can use that to tap for black and red simultaneously. So that was very useful from that particular set that it originated from. That was from the sort of Ravnica block, where there was a lot of cards that required 2 colours, and that was useful for that. There's also the Rakdos Signet, and that's an artifact version. Not surprisingly, this doesn't bounce, but it produces the same sort of mana. These are prints from Commander, so very, very useful in Commander. Okay, so we then have an example of a fetch land, which is Bloodstained Mire. You pay 1 life, sacrifice Bloodstained Mire, and search your library for a swamp or mountain card, and then put it into play and shuffle your library. So that's a fetch land. Doesn't actually generate any mana, it just goes and fetches other mountains or swamps. Shadowblood Ridge is an example of a filter land, basically. So you're paying 1 colourless and you get to tap it and then convert that to black or black-red mana. And there's another example of filter land there. Graven Khans. Again, you can use, this one's interesting because you can use this to generate colourless mana, but then you can use it to turn either black or red mana into black black, black red, or red red to add to your mana pool. Again, very useful for the set that it was designed for, which was that would be not Eventide, the one before that, Shadowmoor. Yes, it's got the Reaper's crown symbol on there. And actually from Lorwyn, we have Auntie's Hovel, which is a sort of, I don't know what you'd call this, a reveal land, in that you reveal a goblin when this comes into play. If you don't, it comes into play tap. So it's a tap land where the condition is you have a goblin in your hand that you can reveal, and that adds black or red to your mana pool. So there's some example of some dual lands from various sets, and that exploit various concepts. And then The other thing which I'm going to briefly cover is just looking at lands that destroy lands. I'm going to be looking at land destruction next week, but I just thought as I'm mentioning lands, I'll mention these in passing. There's 3 examples here. You've got Strip Mind, which adds colourless mana, and you sack it to destroy a target land. Ghost Quarter, which is a very interesting card because it has sort of dual use, and a lot of people get confused over how it can be used. You can use it to generate colourless mana. You can use it to destroy any target land, so an opponent's target land. It does mean that they get to draw a basic land card from their library and put it into play. But this can also be used as a sort of filtering, so you can play it against yourself, destroy your own land, and then go and search for a specific basic land card. So a couple of uses there, but depending on what sort of deck you're playing, on what sort of opponent you're playing, and what sort of lands they've got, you're going to use it in lots of different ways. And then we also have Tectonic Edge, which was from Worldwake. And this is very much tied in with what was happening in Worldwake. So you have man lands in there, and so this is a way of dealing with that particular threat, because this again taps for colourless mana, and for 1 you can tap it, sacrifice it, destroy a non-basic land, but you can only activate it if an opponent controls 4 or more lands, so you're going to be reasonably on into the game when that would happen. So not particularly fast, but it's good for dealing with things like man lands basically. So like I said, next week I'm going to look in a bit more detail about land destruction by other lands generally, in addition to other destruction of lands by other cards. So that's in terms of the cards out the way. Now I just want to do a little bit about when you're looking up stuff on the web, how do you get this to sort of work for you? So I'm going to try here and just see if this works. So if you're trying to choose stuff for your toolkit, what's the best way to do it? How do you manage to find out all these cards? Well, obviously you can use the Gatherer, which is Magic the Gathering sort of official website. There are other websites that you can also do this through, but I'm just going to use this one. So as an example, supposing we wanted to look up some lands that generated both red and black mana. So we go into the advanced settings on here, go down to our rules text. We want to find something that contains black, so we put that in a curly bracket with the letter B, and we're looking for some red in there. And then again we're just going to take our clues from an existing card, so we also use the words mana and pool here. Now I'm going to leave this open. This should also, I'm not going to say look for lands types down here, and the reason I'm going to do that is I'm hoping to find some artifacts as well. So I do a search, and here we have 43 results return. You can see we've got a number of things. We have a creature here, which and again it's just going for the oracle text, so it may find certain things just based on what we've put in. But hopefully you can see there the same, say, the usual suspects coming up. We've got interesting things like Burnt Offering in there as well, and other cards which also might generate additional coloured mana in addition to the ones I've already shown you, and other creatures that generate those sort of 2 colours in addition to others. So that's basically the sort of search we might do if we were looking for dual lands. Of course what it won't do is it won't find the original dual land in here, because the wording is very different on that card. And some of the dual lands, it says things like, this is a taps for red or black mana, or this is both a forest, this is both a mountain and a swamp. So you just have to make sure that you adjust your text here to find those appropriate cards and look them up. So for some, you just have to be selective about what you put in here. If I was just looking for argument's sake, suppose I was just looking for red, then I just get rid of that, redo the search, and now what that will do is that will find any card that just generates black mana. And I may be using this later on in the episodes to try and find creatures that additionally generate black mana. And of course, to do that, I would have to go and probably refine my search further. So supposing I was doing that at this point in time, just to show you, add to that. This is just giving you a very quick overview of how I use this to find similar things, and you can see how that works there. So you can see you can find creatures like Basal Thrall that generate black mana for creatures, and then obviously I could put in instant instead of creature, and I should find the good old Dark Ritual in there. Okay, so that's about it for this episode. I hope you've enjoyed the things I've covered. And like I said, next week I'm going to be looking at the issue of destroying lands. Okay, bye for now.